Hi everyone, I'm reading another chapter from Horrorstör by Grady Hendrix. This is going to be chapter 10 and it is called Huga. Huga is some sort of office chair clearly. And the article says, introduce your home self to your work self with the adjustable rolling Huga. Let the creativity you feel when you're at your most comfortable transform your workspace into a smart space. And the story begins. Amy tried scrambling away, but the hands found her and they were all over her, hundreds of hands, dragging her from her hiding place, pulling her across the floor, smashing her into walls and furniture, twisting, screaming so loudly and for so long that she forgot she was screaming. Amy clawed at the maple flooring, but only succeeded in peeling off one of her fingernails like a wet postage stamp. Cold, dirt-encrusted hands grabbed at her ankles, her wrists, her throat, her face. Amy's mind popped like a light bulb, and only then did she finally go quiet. After that, it was all hands, dragging her, pushing and shoving and groping and pulling, and the whole time it was so dark she could have been asleep. Every breath she took was thick and filthy with the stench from the hallway. People or things that were shaped like people thronged around her in a crushing mob. Their muddy clothes suffocated her, the bodies underneath their rags as dead as marble. Her head was filled with their stench, her bones were chilled by their cold. The hands lifted her up and slammed her down into a chair, knocking the wind out of her in one shocked gasp. Some distant part of her mind recognized it as a Punang, high-backed armchair with its cushion removed. A strap was cinched hard around her chest, and when she inhaled it, tightened, collapsing her lungs, flattening her ribs, keeping her from drawing enough air to scream. She tried to kick, but the shapes in the darkness held her legs, and straps bit into her shins. The shapes forced her wrists down and fastened them to the arms of the chair, and then more bands encircled her flesh. More and more of them stretched over her thighs, around her knees, across her ankles, her waist, her shoulders, her neck. When she tried to move her head, she realized that it had been strapped to the back of the chair, leaving her no choice but to stare straight ahead. Over the ripe stink, she smelled hot, scorched plastic and realized dimly that they were using the heat sealer, the one that locked thin plastic straps around bundles of cardboard in the trash room. Roughly, the hands tightened the straps, the sharp plastic edges slicing through her skin and muscle to grit bone. All over her body, the bands cut into her flesh as they were being pulled taut. She was a plastic bag full of blood being squeezed and compressed until she was about to burst. Breathing quickly and shallowly, she could barely deliver air to her lungs. A whine escaped her. It would have been a scream if she could have opened her mouth wide enough, but her jaw was strapped shut as well. Where was she? Home office? Bedrooms? It was too dark to know. Her surroundings were crowded with humanoid shapes, and she could feel the cold and the stink radiating from their bodies. Yet, despite their presence, the space felt empty, as if everyone around her was hollow, as if they were unpersons, as if they weren't really there. Then a voice whispered from the darkness, "It's for your own good, you know." Amy whimpered. "Shh." Josiah hushed. "This is what you have always needed. You have no secrets from me." Amy tried to struggle, but was unable to move. "I understand your madness," he whispered into her ear. Amy could hear the air wheezing in and out of the flap of torn skin across his throat. "Madness is an inflammation of your blood, an excitement of your arteries. My tranquilizing chair constricts the impetus of blood toward your brain and lessens muscular action, reducing the frequency of your pulse. If necessary, I may bleed you of inflammatory humors, or apply ice baths or boiling water treatments without altering your position and without opposition." Amy felt Josiah moving to the other side of her head. She strained to turn her eyes in his direction, trembling with effort as she tried to see him in the dark. "Your madness is a typical case," Josiah said. "Your spirit is agitated and restless, and you engage in pointless activity, roaming about in an excitable frenzy to no great effect." His words resonated with something deep inside Amy's mind. She did run around, trying desperately to get somewhere, and what was the point? Was there a point? "You want to be well," Josiah said. "That is the natural state for even a broken woman such as yourself. But although your spirit is willing, your flesh is weak. My tranquilizing chair allows you to stop fighting your nature. It masters your flesh. You will sit in contemplation here as your hot blood ceases its fevered circulation, and your brain, deprived of this poison, will at last achieve the stillness you crave. It is humane and merciful, a freedom from your torments. And if you die, isn't the stillness of death preferable to the vain agitation and senseless chaos of your life? It will be a great peace for you, Amy, a great peace." A hand stroked the top of her head, and though she tried to recoil from its touch, she was unable to move. Eventually, Josiah's hand stopped stroking her head, and then she didn't hear him anymore. After a while, she didn't feel like Amy anymore. She was a thing tied to a chair, and slowly she began to go insane. She wasn't used to being completely still. In real life, Amy was always adjusting herself, moving, flexing, bending, unbending, rearranging her arms and legs. These options had been taken from her. She could feel her muscles cramping, her joints stiffening, the blood pooling in her swollen feet, and the frustration and pain made her want to scream. If only she could get enough air into her flattened lungs or open her mouth wide enough to make a sound. Her spine was pressed hard into the wooden back of the chair, becoming a column of pain running from her tailbone to the base of her skull. Her shoulders were on fire. Her neck burned from holding up her heavy skull. Her kneecaps ached as if they were going to tear through her skin. She felt everything below her knees go numb, but her fingers were the worst. She tried to flex them, to wiggle each one like just a tiny bit, but they were tied down so tightly it was as though something had closed its mouth around them and wouldn't let go. When she tried to stretch them, they only strained hopelessly against the bands. She felt gravity pulling blood into her fingertips, causing them to swell like juicy red grapes. With every heartbeat, she felt her pulse throb beneath her nails. She was facing nothing, looking at nothing, surrounded by a darkness so profound she couldn't tell if her eyes were open or closed. With no input, set adrift inside her own skull, Amy's mind began to turn on itself. It began to sort through her 24 years and calculate what she had to show for all the fighting, all the struggle, all the scrimping and saving and double shifts and finishing papers and working on her portfolio. All that effort, all that pain, for what? Every morning she woke up more exhausted than the morning before. Every month her rent was late. Every week she mooched groceries from her roommates. She never had enough gas. She was always borrowing money. She was constantly in debt, and still it wasn't enough. The hamster wheel kept turning faster and faster. In a way, the chair was her friend. It freed her from all the illusions. It showed her the truth. She was alone. No one was there to help her. All her life she had run from one thing she'd been born to do: wear a uniform and work at a register. It was time to embrace her true nature. The problem was the liars. They said she could do anything she set her mind to. They told her she could shoot for the moon because if she missed, she'd be among the stars. They made movies tricking her into thinking she could achieve heroic things. All lies. Because she was born to answer phones in call centers, to carry bags to customers' cars, to punch a clock, to measure her life in smoke breaks. To think otherwise was insane. The chair didn't lie to her. The chair cured her of madness. The chair showed her what she was capable of, and that was nothing. Something floated up from the darkness inside Amy's brain, and she realized that she finally had her sit-down job. It was funny because it was true. This was the last thing she would ever do, and it was about time. She had failed and failed and failed, although way from the beginning. She had failed to escape her mom's trailer. She had failed to earn her degree. She had failed the shop responsible test. She had failed to do anything with her life. That was her nature. Fail and quit. If you cut her open, it was fail and quit right down to her bones. For years, Amy had wondered what would happen if she stopped fighting and let go. For as long as she remembered, she had been scared of how far she would fall if she stopped struggling. It was a relief to finally have an answer. This far. This was how far she would fall. This was the bottom. A sense of relief numbed the pain as her limbs lost circulation. She could hear her mind getting better. She could feel it healing, sloughing off decades of lies and madness, accepting her place in the natural order. She would stay in this chair not moving, not doing anything, and there would be no more illusions, no more lies, no more useless struggle, no more failed attempts to escape. She was thankful for the chair. It was where she belonged. Chest hitching, the bands around it so tight they kept her from drawing a breath, Amy became lightheaded. She could not move. She could not see. She could not hear. She could not breathe. And her only thought was a single loop running over and over and over again. I'm home. I'm home. I'm home. And that is the end of chapter 10. That is quite depressing. And yeah, we'll go on to chapter 11 next time. But for now, that is it. And I hope you join me for next time, because I have a feeling that you'll want an ending to that, because that kind of sucked. Thanks. Bye.